I cannot tell you how many times I would hear one of my coffee people say, well, we're in God's waiting room. I used to go off.
My God.
I used to go, I'm telling you, Lois, you just won't admit you're a senior. I said, well, what is there to admit? Take a look at me. I don't have to admit anything. It speaks for itself. So I'm going to give you my new ism. It's a long time between diapers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Silver and Sensational, the show where we help women like you live self-sufficient, empowered lives. I'm Jessica Lynn Birdie, and your host is Lois Mills.
Well, hello, everyone, and I love to start off by saying, it is I, the Lois, and welcome, and thank you for tuning in.
If you're watching us on YouTube, remember to hit like and subscribe. Please leave a review wherever you're watching us. Leave a comment, or we're also a podcast. So if you listen on your preferred podcast, make sure to leave a review and a 5-star review. Today, we're talking about ageism, which is something we've kind of talked about on past episodes, but haven't dedicated a full episode to.
Right.
And I saw a lot of posts about 5 phrases we should leave in the past. So that's what we're going to focus on, are phrases that keep ageism alive. And if you're either part of the generation that's subject to ageism, or you're someone like me who doesn't want to subject someone to ageism, but there are common phrases that we use every day that you might not know continues it. So we're going to go through that today.
Yes.
So Lois, I kind of wanted to start off with what your understanding of ageism is.
Well, ageism is one of the last socially acceptable prejudices. You know, we've come a long way with other isms, but ageism seems to be accepted actually by the people it affects the most. So for me, it is making judgments based on someone's age. So, you know, I'm probably as guilty in sometimes thinking young people, blah. That's as much ageism as someone your generation says, well, you know, she's too old too. So it's hard to move past this, but I think if as a whole we can make a concentrated effort to be more sensitive in what we say, as everything else gets changed, it's on a one-by-one basis.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's like anything, it's bringing awareness and mindfulness to your everyday speech. Because again, that's why I said at the top, you probably don't want to be ageist towards somebody.
No.
But there are these casual things that we do that reinforce ageism.
There are cultures influenced by Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, countries such as Japan and China and Vietnam that all value the wisdom that is imparted by the elders. And they're highly respected, but that's not so much for in the Western world. And I'd have to say, when it comes to women, ageism is probably more a factor that is in the United States than even in European countries. Because I know such as when I've spent a lot of time in France, and in terms of being attractive to the other sex, being mature isn't the factor that it is here. You know, we're very much a youth-oriented country, and of course I live in probably the most youth-oriented city within the United States. So I've got to say, firstly, I hear so many of my contemporaries uttering the ageism examples that we're going to talk about on a regular basis. And if we're the ones that are the most affected, and we continue to feed into all of these stereotypes, and we support these stereotypes, you know, we can't be judging the younger generation for perpetuating what we ourselves are saying. I cannot tell you how many times I would hear one of my coffee people say something about, well, we're in God's waiting room. I used to go off.
My God.
I used to go, I'm telling you, I would get so irate, and then the other people would defend this by saying, Lois, you just won't admit you're a senior. I said, well, what is there to admit? Take a look at me. I don't have to admit anything. It speaks for itself. But
Oh my
why do you
goodness.
have to keep talking about this?
So I think this is why this episode really felt important to us to make, because they are reinforced by the age group it affects. And so we want to help both generations eradicate these certain mindsets and reinforcements from
Yes.
the language.
Yes.
Because you're so right. Also, this is not to say that ageism doesn't affect men. Of course it does. But our society in the United States doesn't put the same value marker on an aging woman as they do an aging man.
Oh, honey, they look more distinguished as they get older.
They're sexy you'll have men that make the argument that it's because they could still biologically repopulate the world. And that if a woman, her uterus is of no use anymore, then of course she wouldn't be considered desirable. These are actually things that have been uttered to me.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Which I say, there are almost 8 billion people on the planet. We're not worried about repopulating the world or whether or not you have Viagra. So let's get started with the 5 phrases we want to get rid of in 2024. The first one is, wow, you still do that. Or you can still do that.
Yes, guess what? I can still ride a bicycle. Yes, I could still do Pilates. I could still work out at the gym. I could still lift those weights with these frail little arms. Yes, I can do all of that. I can still calculate a tip in my head and get it rounded out so that the final number ends in zeros. Yes, I can still start a podcast and YouTube channel.
I love that, Lois.
How many years away from the grave? Imagine. Yes, I have not stopped checking in on what website can I learn something new from. Yes, I've tried to learn how to do different things. And when I don't like something about myself, I'm still able to say, I still have time to change it. So yes, I still do that.
I think this phrase shows up casually in other ways as well, which is why it's insidious and one that we wanted to bring attention to is someone when you said you go to Pilates and someone going, "Oh my God, that's so great for you that you're doing that or that you can."
Mm-hmm.
Good
for you.
What do you think? What does that feel like experiencing, being on the receiving end of something like that?
Well, if you're sensitive to 4-letter words, you should tune out right now. What does it feel like? It feels like I want to say, fuck you. That's what it feels like. And yes, I can still wear a mini skirt if I chose to, because my legs are still good.
Well, and that's what I really do think this episode goes hand in hand with our episode on what age appropriate dressing was, because not only are we telling people that they can't have self-expression or they're not, they should be more mature in their dress. A lot of these phrases and old ways of thinking were coming from people that were in the same demographic.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, are you kidding? How many people have said to me, don't you think you're too old to have long hair?
Right? Who cares? What? It's their embarrassment, ultimately. I think if you've gone to therapy enough, or if you had emotionally intelligent parents, which, I didn't, you I don't know if you experienced this too, where girls were mean at school and your mom would say it's, just because they're jealous.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought that was a fucking crock of shit. I was like, no, why would they be jealous? That girl's pretty and I'm ugly and they're treating me like shit because I'm a fucking shit person. This is like where, do you know what I mean? Like I was too young to understand what that meant was jealousy. I've come to understand, though, in maturity, it's less jealousy and more how they perceive the world through the lens that they live in, or the things that they've been told they can't do. Someone told them they shouldn't have long hair. They cut it. They see you doing it. And whether or not it's because they really don't think you look good with it or what have you, they think that there's one side where they're trying to protect you by saying, oh, you shouldn't have that. And I don't want someone else to tell you don't have long hair.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying there's like multiple ways why someone may tell you something that's none of their goddamn business. The result is the same, though. That's their problem and their perspective of what's holding them back from living their life fully.
Also, that's it's a really good observation. And I also sometimes believe that the fact that they can accept something different from who and what they are speaks to the small mind that they have. And, they cannot seem to bring themselves to say someone like, oh God, Helen Mirren, she is sexy and fabulous. End of story. They seem to feel that if they can't be and do that person shouldn't either.
I think you're exactly right. It's the small-mindedness, which is exactly why I said, like, you either you came out the chute emotionally intelligent, or you went to therapy, or you're walking around with a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
Of course, we want to be accepted in society and people to look at us and think positive things. But usually when someone comes at us with their own issues, it's because they haven't gotten past them themselves.
Exactly.
So I think something that's similar to that phrase, but a little bit different and insinuates a little bit different, is you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And again, this can be said in a couple different ways. And you kind of touched on this with, your willingness to continue to learn things and taking it upon yourself. But I know I'm guilty of being surprised someone can use a smartphone so well or can navigate the internet or, but I think that you can't teach an old dog new tricks is uttered more from the older population than it is the younger population the older population.
Absolutely. And, again, people, this is an excuse for you not to change.
Wow.
This is nothing more than a complacency of, that's the way I am. This is how I was brought up.
We're in God's waiting room. You don't have to, you know what I mean? You don't have to change if you've resigned to this.
You resign yourself to this. And I just have to throw in this other thing about, please, people, please do not say to me, I wasn't raised that way. Or
Whoa.
I never ate that kind of food growing up. People, you got 60 and 70 years to have developed your own life. So I'm going to give you my new ism. It's a long time between diapers. Okay? This is just you telling you I don't have to get out of my comfort zone. And as long as you perpetuate that kind of conversation verbally or even internally, you're just going to whittle away until the day you do enter God's waiting room. I just say it's not the way I wish to live.
Bringing awareness to this phrase is hopefully helping those of you that are watching to realize you are perpetuating this against yourself. You are holding yourself back. And if that does resonate with you, talk to a friend about it, talk to a therapist about it, find a support group. There's a chance there's depression, there's a chance there's resentment, there's a chance there's anxiety and learning new things. But there's support that can help you break free of those chains that hold you back. The first way I learned how to not, move forward in my life was to not put my perspective onto somebody. So Sure, you might say this to somebody, or you might say this to yourself, but if at least build awareness of you doing this, and that will be probably one of the first steps you can take toward phasing this "you can't teach an old dog new tricks" mentality. That's what I'd like to offer to somebody. Number 3, you still have time. I feel like this happens when you're in a conversation and someone says, "Oh, I've always wanted to learn the violin, but I can't now." And someone like myself would say to somebody, "Oh my God, you still have time. Don't worry." What is that experience?
Well, on a personal level, I'm usually the one who says, "You still have time." Okay, I hate to say it.
Well, then what's the way we can rephrase that? Because I do think the negativity around "you still have time," it is probably from the person it's coming from, right? Nothing's more condescending than a close to 40-year-old saying, "Oh my God, you have so much time, don't worry about it." Just in the same way, someone who's older, when I tell them my age, they're like, "Oh, you're so young." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not really so young."
This is I'm really learning this in terms of I've never had children, so I don't think I'm not always in tune with the mind process of when I was their age. Okay, it's not something that comes to me naturally. But recently I have been able to be more judgmental, should I say, about what somebody should be doing by a certain age.
Interesting.
That is not a good thing. Okay,
yes.
I am not bragging about this. I understand, I think parents a little bit better when I look at some people and say, by this time they should be doing X, Y, Z. All right. It goes so many ways. It goes from older people saying that to younger people, and from maybe not so young saying it to older people.
Right.
If we're going to be practical, if I at my age dream of being a concert pianist, you can't tell me I still have time.
Sure.
Okay, still have time. But if someone is talking about pursuing a new hobby, a new whatever, let's say I at this point wanted to go back to flying an airplane. If and I haven't checked into it, so I don't know if there's any minimum age or a maximum age. I mean, I was licensed, for single engine, but that's as far as I went. So maybe I would want to go now and go back to do that. I wouldn't want someone saying you don't have time. You do have time, but I don't need you to tell me that.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? See, we're not as offended by hearing somebody say you still have time as we would be offended by someone saying you could take off a few pounds. Jesus, Jenny, that would be like the shot heard around the world.
Totally.
I mean, so maybe some of these things we're talking about, Jessica, maybe we should put them in our heads that they are as offensive as telling somebody,
wow,
you should cut your hair, you should get this, you should lose weight, you should.
I think that's exactly right. And I think this particular phrase, quote unquote, "you still have time," it's not on its face this very bad phrase.
No, it isn't, but
it perpetuates this idea that you're of a certain age that shouldn't or has a hard time doing things.
Right.
And I think this whole time we've been talking, it's making me realize when I'm conversing with somebody and they're sharing something they're excited about, or you're talking to me about Pilates, if that, weird voice in the back of my head goes, good for them. Shut up, Jessica. Let them just talk and go, that's so cool. As opposed to pass a judgment, like use that extra second to think about what you're responding to them with. Exactly like you said, like, oh, you should lose 5 pounds. Lois, I don't look at my friends and think that anymore. I was raised with that mentality of my father looking at my thighs and going, you're looking too thick. And so I looked at other women and thought they were, or whatever. And that has melted away. And I love people just for who they are. And so ageism and aging needs to fall into that same category. And I think that's why this phrase was helpful for reorganizing the brain
Very
thought
much
on
so.
that.
Very much so.
All right. So this goes back to the episode, our last episode on age-appropriate dressing. Number 4, you're too old to do that or wear that.
All right. Well, I don't think we should spend a lot of time on this because I addressed it a little earlier, and we did do a whole episode on it.
Yes,
so
we did.
If you missed it, go back to look at that one. I go back to what I said before. Who is too old to wear what? If your arms are great, wear a sleeveless dress. If they're not, don't. If your legs are great, you can get away with a little shorter dress. If they're not, don't.
Or wear tights. Jesus.
Or Exactly. But, for any of us to look at somebody else and say, you're too old to wear that or to do that, that's a judgment you don't get to make. How's that? Is that enough?
I love that. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And yes, like Lois said, go ahead, check out that episode where we fully dive into that.
Oh, big time. Big time. Because
again, it's a big issue, especially with women and other women telling other women what they can and can't do.
It's really women. We're the biggest culprits with that. And if we're not saying it to somebody's face, we're saying it about them.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's just as offensive. Because again, you're perpetuating a negativity and a judgment. And again, you just don't get to vote on that.
I love that. And the final phrase that we would really like to see done away with is, and Lois, I'm guilty of it. You look great for your age.
Oh, Christ, that one makes me crazy.
I want to die just knowing I have said it.
Okay. Don't we all look at Jane Fonda and say, God, she looks great for her age?
Sure.
Yeah, we do.
Could we take away the age part, though? I think that's what we're missing here is, man, you look great. Like,
end of story. End
bye.
of story. Again, if we stop perpetuating these quotes verbally, eventually we'll stop thinking them.
Here's something it's really important to address when this kind of phrasing comes up. I'll see somebody, they're older, they do look great, they're wearing something cool, or their hair looks good. You look great. Let's just say I've done the work I've taken out for your age. Oh my God, you look great. You do meet the person that says, oh my God, I'm so old, I should, who qualifies everything, who makes excuses. There are people out there, whether they're fishing for more compliments, whether they really are insecure or unsure if they should have worn the hat or not. That's going to make it hard to give someone that compliment. If you're receiving this insecurity back at you.
You say thank you.
That's exactly right. So this is a two-way street. If you're at this age demographic where someone's saying that to you, accept the compliment, move on.
Move on. It's, but again, it's okay, if someone's had work done, you don't have to qualify. She looks good for her age, but she's had work done. Again, what does it have to do with you? It has nothing to do with you. If you can't say you look great and stop it right there, Or or she looks great when you're talking about someone to someone
Yes.
else, and stop it right there. How petty are you going to get? I mean, do you really want to be that petty? Oh, but she's had work done. Again, I go back to, so what? That's that person's, that's what they wanted to do. That's how they feel. They wanted to enhance their image. If they did it for somebody else, so what? If they did it for themselves, even better. But again, so what? Stop making all these judgments and stop with the you look good for your age, because I want to know, what picture are we? So let's go to the Jane Fonda number, 85 years old.
Sure.
Okay, 85 years old. So are we going back to an 85-year-old who has worked in the fields all of her life, bent over picking strawberries in the hot sun, and what that woman might look like at 85? Is this what we're comparing Jane Fonda to?
Wow. Sure.
So what picture, or 70, what 70-year-old are we imagining it against? I mean, we're so much more advanced.
Wow.
The boomers, as an example, have had so many different enhancements throughout our lives. We've known about, now, yes, we probably suffered more from skin cancers and aging
Sure.
skin because we weren't the SPF crowd. But
Right.
we've had so many different mechanisms to help that. Skin resurfacing, all of this stuff. Or maybe none of it. Maybe you just have good genes. So who are we comparing ourselves to? I mean, I'm going to go back to my own mother, who at 70, she didn't look 70. When she was 90, on the eve of her 98th birthday, while she was dying, the priest came in to give her last rites. And he looks at me and he said, "This woman is 97 years old?" Well, I got to tell you, my mother had great skin.
She just had it.
Yeah, she just had it. She didn't have a lot of wrinkles. I mean, that side of my family has drooping jowls. But she was lying back. You didn't see so much drooping jowls. My point being, what is the comparison? So if we say, you look good for your age when I compare you to what? Okay,
Wow.
what are you going
Wow.
to answer? So that's why we can drop the for your age, in my humble opinion.
I love that. And while you were talking, I was reminded of one of my favorite quotes of all time.
Tell me.
It's an Eleanor Roosevelt quote.
Oh, yes.
And she says, "Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people." And so I think about this all the time when I'm in a group of people who talk about the girl that just left the room, or the person that wants to discuss whether that person was funny enough on stage or what have you. And then you're in another room with people who, let's talk about what we did last night, or let's, I want to be in the room where people are talking about ideas and not each other, and trying to deduce whether someone's had work done or not.
Exactly. So
Just ask yourself, what group are you part of, and who do you want to be with? And it's just like smoking or eating fatty foods. If you hang out with an asshole who smokes, you're probably going to have a cigarette, So if you're with somebody that likes to talk shit about Jane that just left the room and she probably got Botox last week, is that somebody you really want to be friends with? Or can you ask them to not talk about those things? Those are different ways you can weed out ageism too, is the influences around you. Lois, I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience with this stuff. I think we've given people some different ways to look at these phrases.
I sure hope so. I sure hope so.
I think so. And I really want to encourage our audience to share with us
Please.
different experiences they've had, phrases that you feel perpetuate ageism, has had a negative effect, things you've overcome, things people said you couldn't do, but you did anyway. So please get engaged with us and let us know.
Yes, because we want to eradicate ageism.
Aren't we doing that here every episode?
I
think
sure
so.
hope so.
So we want to thank you so much for listening, for watching us on YouTube. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us over at silverandsensational@gmail.com. We're on TikTok now. We're on Facebook and on Instagram, all at Silver and Sensational. And Lois, if they are watching us on YouTube, what should they do?
Oh, please, please, please do subscribe and do like us. And please, it's wonderful if you would share us with people that you think, even if you don't think, share us with people that you have contacts for. If you've got their contacts, share us. And
I love that.
Do hit notify, although we do drop a new episode every Friday. So thank you, Jessica, for all the work you've put into every episode we do. And hopefully you all will join us again next week. Jessica?
Lois, thank you so much.
Bye now. Thanks for watching, everyone. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and the notify bell. And please share it with your friends. And if you feel like commenting, use that box, will you?